This talk, I specifically made it so it's aimed at entrepreneurs and small business who have no experience in search advertising or digital marketing in general. If you have any previous experience in those kind of things, you probably will be seeing a lot of things that you already know, but feel free to hang around anyway, of course. There we go. So get found. I chose this title because this is also for my own business, one of the catchphrases I use a lot, as people seem to be unsure of how to get found on the internet. Obviously, there's a lot to it, but today I'm going to be focusing on search advertising, more specifically Google Ads, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's jump into it. What to expect, first of all, as I said, this is for absolute beginners. I've aimed to talk at people who have no experience at all. So it's very basic, just the very basics to get your first advertisement running, your first Google Ads campaign, basically. And it will be looking like this. I'm going to try and keep it under 15 minutes, something like that. So we might have to skip over some parts, but we'll see how it goes. And feel free to ask any questions along the way if you want to, as I won't be having time to do a Q&A afterwards, but you can always reach out to me and we can have a chat about anything you want, really. So, okay, first off, about me, a very, very short introduction. I've been doing this stuff for a couple of years now. I'm not by no means the biggest expert on this, but I've chosen to focus on smaller businesses and entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, because especially in my area as well, there's a lot of people having like their own freelance business or maybe a coaching business or stuff like this with no digital marketing experience, and I just love helping them get their first online leads or online sales. Instead of working with a big agency, they prefer working with me in that case. So what is search advertising? Really, basically, most of us, if not everyone here, has some experience with it from the audience side, obviously, as I guess most of you use Google or maybe a local search engine that is more popular in your country. But well, search advertising, to steal this from Wikipedia, is a method of placing online advertisements on web pages that show results from search engine queries. And this last part is obviously the most important. It shows an ad when someone searches for a certain word or phrase. And this we'll get back to this at a later point. But right here, you can see an example of what a search advertisement looks like. And we all know this, obviously. We all use Google, and you've probably seen this. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4, but you probably noticed. So if I were to search for public speaking crash course, which I totally did not do 1 hour ago, then these are the ads I personally got. There's a very big chance someone else would get different ads based on their search behavior. Now, the reason I like search this much over other types of digital marketing, well, there's a lot of reasons, but these 3 for me are the most important one, in the sense that it's the most relevant. It's only going to target people who actually search for the keyword or the query that you choose, or at least things related to this one. Compare this to, like, for example, Facebook, where you would push an advertisement in between someone's newsfeed. That's a lot more invasive to me. So personally, both as a user and as an advertiser, I prefer search in this case. It's also quite straightforward, especially when just talking about pure search campaigns. You won't need like a fancy visual or something. You just need to know which keyword you want to target and to write an ad for that. Obviously, when you want to dabble in display campaigns or stuff like this, you will need a little bit more work. But that said, still, it's a way of advertising that doesn't necessarily need huge budgets. Budget is something we will as well get back to later on in the presentation. And then, of course, it's pay-per-click. Now, there's a lot of pay-per-click mediums, definitely. But I just really love them because you're only paying for a click. It's that simple. And as long as you make sure your ad is relevant and contains a decent offer or something they're actually interested in, this is relevant traffic for you. Except in cases where maybe like bots or something are used, but that goes beyond the scope of this presentation. So search engines, we've talked about them. for a few minutes now, and of course, Google is by far the most popular. So what you see a lot when people talk about SEA or search engine advertising, sometimes it's used as a synonym for Google Ads, basically. I guess that's kind of a false point of view, because obviously there's still Bing. We got also Baidu, Yahoo, Yandex, all those other ones. Especially in different countries, it differs a lot. But basically, all of the word Google is the one that is used the most, and the one that most people, both advertisers and users, will have experience with. What it's not, this is also quite important to talk about, I think. It's not free. It's obviously paid advertising. You're paying for your spot on the results page of Google or Bing or whatever. So it's not something you can do if you have literally zero budget to spend. There is a free, so to speak, part to search engine marketing, which is SEO. Most people probably have heard of it at some point in time. But again, that's a whole different bucket, a whole different rabbit hole that we're not going to go down to today. Second of all, it's not forever. What I mean by this is that it's kind of not a evergreen solution, in the sense that you might get a cool campaign running, you might get good results, and it might even just let it run for months or maybe even years at a time. But at some point it will, stop working, or at least work not as good as before. And obviously you have to keep paying the money to keep it running. Where, for example, as we said, SEO is something that, while you also have to update it constantly and then be very involved, it's not something that just switches on and off, for example. This one, it's kind of, I don't like putting it here, but I just figured I had to, because I do know people, and I myself am one of them, that, when I see an ad, depending on what I'm searching for or what's written in the ad, I'm just like, meh, I don't really trust this. And I know there's more people like this. However, it greatly depends on the target audience. For example, different age groups will react differently to the advertisements, or not even notice they're clicking on an advertisement. And of course, if the ad is relevant and it actually means something to your user, there's no reason for them to not trust you. Keywords are key. To be honest, one of the reasons I love search advertising so much is because of keywords. When I first discovered this, and just the keyword research part, where you actually dive into what people are looking up on the internet, what people are searching for, I thought that was just so fun. First of all, it's very interesting to see what people are looking for about certain products or services, or maybe even your brand. And also in the keyword researches and the keyword search that you will do, you will sometimes come across some very weird stuff as well. So people really do search for weird stuff online. But what is a keyword? So if you've never done any search advertising, this might not come natural to you, but a keyword is a word or phrase, does not have to be one word, this is very important, that you actually choose in your campaigns to help Google determine where you can appear, where your ad can appear. Basically, how it works is someone searches for something. If in your campaign you have the keyword listed, or maybe a variant, or a longer tail variation with more words behind it, and then Google will show the ad to the user searching for solar panels in this case. Of course, it's a little more complicated than that, but we'll get to that. So keywords are really, really important, because if you're getting shown for things that are not really relevant to you, or you are showing ads to a user that are not really relevant to them, obviously you won't get any results, or bad results at least. Now, to start your keyword research, before you dive into this, it's quite important to have an idea of the buyer journey. Now, again, anyone with any marketing experience or background will obviously know this already. But I find myself going back to this a lot when starting up a new campaign in Google Ads. Because it's very basic, it's easy to forget sometimes, or at least to go on autopilot and not think too much about it. But really, it's the bread and butter of any campaign, in my opinion. So it's important to realize that anyone goes through these steps in a buying decision, whether you offer a product or a service. Anyone will go through these steps. Maybe someone is already here, or maybe even here, but still at some point they went through that funnel. And when doing keyword research, I think it's very important to map the keywords you find, or the keywords you think of in a brainstorm, for example, to map these to such a funnel, so that you get an idea of, okay, where people searching for this particular keyword, for example, what are solar panels, where are they in my buyer journey? If you're selling solar panels online, excuse me, obviously this is right at the top of the funnel. People not knowing what solar panels are. I'm not sure this actually is getting searched, but it's a good example of something that is at the awareness stage, maybe the interest stage of a buyer journey. Moving down, people will start to think about buying it, maybe find some pros and cons about it, and eventually they'll be looking to buy. This is very important, and obviously these are the keywords as well that will get you the most results. Especially if you have a lower budget, this might be interesting to just focus on bottom of funnel stuff to try and make the most of your budget. This goes together with the previous slides, basically in the sense that search intent is also very important, but a little bit harder sometimes to get a clear idea of. I split them into 3 categories. I know some people split them into 4, but I prefer these 3, where you have navigational, informational, and transactional search intent. I'm not going to read everything here, obviously, but navigational speaks for itself, I think. Someone Googling Twitter login is just looking for the login page on Twitter. There's no point in advertising anything there, because he's obviously looking for that very specific page, and anything else he won't care about. Informational is something like, who is Donald Trump? Again, something that probably has not been Googled anymore in the last few years, but still, it's a good example of an informational keyword. People looking for information on something. These can be advertised on, definitely, but you have to be aware that at this very moment, the moment someone is typing this in, like for example, searching for information about solar panels again, you have to be aware that they're not yet looking to buy at that very moment, or at least as far as we know. But that does not stop you from advertising them and convincing them to buy, obviously. And then there's a real transactional keyword intent or search intent, like buy MacBook Pro. Obviously, these people are looking to buy, maybe locally. Sometimes you'll see things as buy MacBook Pro in my area or whatever, or maybe just online. And these are the ones that you want these kind of keywords. You want your ad to appear in these kind of keywords. Is obviously, if you have these kind of keywords for your product or service, these people are your potential customers. As we'll see in a few minutes, these are also the most expensive keywords, obviously, to rank on. Just going to quickly check if there's anything in the chat. Okay, no, seems clear. Okay, cool. Let's continue. There we go. So I've talked about keyword research a couple of slides ago already, and then the previous slide as well. Basically, keyword research is, to me, one of the most important steps in doing search advertising. I know up till now we haven't talked about campaigns or ads or actually Google Ads in any way. We'll get to that in a second. But I see a lot of people jumping in, which is not a bad thing, definitely. You can just jump in and start advertising. But in my opinion, doing at least some kind of keyword research beforehand is a very good way to make sure you're not wasting your budget, and you're actually you might discover a lot of other things about your product, your service, the market you're operating in. Countless of times I've had a situation where, due to the keyword research, people will be like, whoa, I didn't know people were actually looking for this or thinking about something like this. So it's actually not just for search advertising, but marketing in general. I really like keyword research as a way to find what people are thinking or what people are writing. There's a lot of tools for this. Actually, Google Ads has one as well, which I don't really like. But there's a lot of tools online to be found. If you just Google keywords tool or keyword research tool, keyword finder, stuff like this, you will find a lot of free and paid options. These are some of my favorites. This one is free up till a certain point. I think you have like 3 or 10 searches before it becomes, before you have to pay. Same with this one. And then SEMrush and this one, they're slightly more advanced, and they also cost a lot, but they have a free trial. So, if you want to try it out, if you want to just jump in and see what you can find with these tools, be sure to give them a go as well. Then the budget. This is a question I get all the time when working with a coach or a freelancer or whatever, smaller businesses. They say like, I don't have that many budget to spend on this channel, on search advertising or on marketing in general, actually. The good thing is AdWords does not have a hard minimum. I mean, you have to spend, obviously, you can put 0 in there, but you can start advertising from like $1 or $2, really. That said, when working with even very low budgets, I usually personally start my campaigns with $5 a day. This is very small. I'm lucky enough to work with people who have run campaigns for companies with like thousands a month, 10,000 a month, millions a year. But when working with smaller companies or solopreneurs, then $5 a day for me is always a good starting point. It won't generate much data, obviously. And depending on the market and the competition, it might even be too low, but you have to start somewhere, obviously. And this will give you at least the info you need to continue your campaign. That said, again, if you really want to see like results and have like a consistent amount of traffic every month that you can work with, analyze the data and improve more, then probably you will be looking at like 500 a month. But again, there's no hard minimum. You can start with way less than this if you want to. We're almost at the part where we're actually going to look at Google Ads and how to set up a campaign, but just quickly want to dive into the cost per click. And I see my time is running out, so I have to actually go quicker. Cost per click basically is what you pay for one click on one keyword. And as I said, I love this about Google Ads because you only pay for the actual click. The tools I mentioned above, this one is Ubersuggest, actually lists the average cost per click. So you get an idea of what a click for a certain keyword would cost. And as you can see, solar panels, sometimes quite expensive. It really depends, in business to business, you see cost per click of $30, $40 sometimes. At other times, it's less than $1. This greatly varies, but it's a great tool to see if, what kind of results you can expect with your budget. I'm going to go over this very, very quickly. Auction and bids is actually out of the scope of this presentation, but all you have to know really is that Google decides which ads to show and in which order by taking your bid into account, so basically based on your budget and setting in Google Ads, and the quality score. I'm not going to dive deeper into this right now, but just remember that if you have a campaign and want to improve this, as a beginner in search advertising, improve these two things, especially your quality score. There's a lot of information to find online. You will have to work on that to get your ads shown or shown higher. All right, so actually time for action and setting up the first campaign. I'm going to go over this as smooth as I can. Obviously, I will make sure you can get the slides. You can reach out to me after this, and I'll send the slides to you or whatever, if you want to go through it at your own pace. So one important thing before we start this is realizing or understanding the account structure in a Google Ads account. You have the account. Within the account, you have multiple campaigns. And within those campaigns, you have multiple ad groups. First of all, at a campaign level, you can set the location, for example. If you only want to advertise in the United States or your own country, maybe worldwide, but that sometimes seems like a bad idea, especially with a lower budget. But you can set it here. And then within the campaign, you have different ad groups. There's a lot of strategies and a lot of ways to do this. And most advertisers with more experience probably have their own tips and tricks on how to set this up, their structure. Basically, within an ad group, you have a list of keywords that you select, and you create a set of ads. You can start advertising with one ad, but Google usually recommends that you create at least 2 ads or even 3 ads. So that's the basic structure of a Google Ads account. Now, actually creating your first campaign and your first advertisement, you'll have to first set up an account. If you've never done this before, you can go to ads.google.com, I believe, and right here in the corner, you'll find the sign in or start now. You probably have a Google account already, so you can use that one to create your Google Ads account. It will take you through a kind of setup wizard, like a tool to get started. And eventually you will end up at this screen where you have to set up your first campaign. It's a little bit overwhelming maybe if it's the first time because there's a lot of options. But if you just have a basic site and you want to generate maybe leads or sales, then one of those first 3 will probably work for you: sales, leads, or website traffic. Actually, if you're not really comfortable with setting up pixels or tracking, then website traffic might be the best way to go. Selecting one of these also defines which campaign types you can use in Google Ads, but this whole talk, I've been talking about search campaigns. So this is the one we'll be diving into. These are, that's for YouTube, for example. These are totally different things, and I'm just talking about search campaigns right now. So those are the campaign settings. You can give it a name. I just named mine example search campaign here and selected the search network. All default options normally will be selected for you. You can select your location, your languages, and stuff like this. This is pretty basic, and the tool is actually really nice. I think it has improved a lot over the past years, and will help you guide you through setting up the campaign. So remember the structure. We had the campaign first, then the ad group. So this is the step where you create an ad group. You can give it a name as well. You set a landing page for it, a standard landing page. You can change this in the advertisement, and then this is the important part. You enter the keywords that you want your ad to appear for. So these keywords will probably come from your keyword research that you've done beforehand, and they will define for what search queries your ad is going to show up in Google. This is very important. It's also important because this means you have to match the ads you create and the keywords you want them to show up for within one ad group. This is the purpose of the ad group, really. If you want to have an ad for solar panels, we'll create it in this ad group and put the keyword for solar panels also in this ad group. Now, finally, actually, there's the ad creation. Like you see, Google actually suggests creating 3. I just created 1 here. You give a headline 1, actually, a headline 2, and potentially a headline 3, but this is not really shown all the time. So only headline 1 and headline 2 are really required, even though you should enter a headline 3 here in case it gets shown. A description, again, description 1 and description 2, and a path from the domain name. This is not a real path. You can just enter what you want to make it look like the most relevant domain you have to offer, or you can just use the actual URL of your landing page. For this, you have to try and at least write a little bit of an engaging headline, an engaging description. The best trick I found is to just imagine you're the user and you have to click on your ad. What would convince you to click? If you think like that, you might actually come up with some great headlines. And then there you go. Actually, the campaign goes live immediately after creating. And if you set a budget and connected a payment method, obviously, otherwise it cannot spend anything. But at that point, it would go live. I just paused my campaign right now, but here you can see the example of your ad, what it's going to look like in the result page, actually. One important thing to note is that if you just set up a campaign and then you immediately go and Google the keywords you entered in your ad group, you probably won't see it immediately. First of all, it takes some time for Google to review your ad and to start showing it. Second of all, it does not always show. Depending on the settings you used, especially in the default setting, Google will try to use your budget as efficiently as possible throughout the day or throughout the month, which might mean that it does not show for every search query, which includes your own, obviously. And there we go. This is a very, very quick tutorial, obviously, on getting your first ad running. But I found that, just when the basics are down, you start. That's the best way to actually improve. The moment your ad is running, the moment you have getting clicks or at least impressions, you can start looking at things to improve. Before that point, you really have nothing. You could spend a year on keyword research, even though I think it's very important. But still, nothing is going to happen until you start that ad. And especially if you're in a certain niche as a freelancer or a coach or whatever, it might be worth it to just launch it like this and see where it ends up. Obviously, you can also check your competitors on the results page and see what they're doing, which might give you some inspiration for an advertisement or something like that. Now, before I'm going to round this up, I have 3 minutes left, I see. I just want to give you 2 more tips. I've been talking about Google Ads mostly, but you have to be aware that Bing Ads is still an option. It only has like 2% or 3% of market share. We talked about this at the beginning, but still I've noticed in the past few years that there's quite a lot of companies, so this is important for B2B situations. There's quite a lot of companies who, for some reason, still have Bing set as the default search engine. I don't know how this is in the United States specifically, but internationally, there's definitely a lot of them. For some reason, they have Bing as the default search engine, which means that people, while working, when looking for certain things, they are going through Bing. Also, Bing allows you to import your Google Ads campaign, so there's no extra setup needed. Nice typo here as well. And Bing is a lot cheaper. Obviously, the competition is a lot lower, so it's a lot cheaper to get clicks. And I've had once or twice, I've had a campaign that actually outperformed Google Ads on Bing. Both were B2B campaigns. And they outperformed mainly because the cost was so low, even though the traffic was slightly lower as well. Second tip, when working with lower budgets, and I've talked about this already, aim for the keywords at the end of the buyer journey. So if you really have a low budget, make sure you're aiming at search queries and keywords with a transactional intent. You're looking for people that are searching for where to buy this product or prices for this service. Because people looking for these kind of things, they are ready to buy or very close to buying at least. If you have a low budget and you're going to spend all that on advertising to people looking for just general information on a certain product or market, then obviously your results will be a lot lower. And there we go. If you have any questions, you can post them in chat or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I don't have that much time left, but I will be glad to chat with you on LinkedIn. I don't have anything to sell or anything to redirect you to. I'll be glad to help you with setting up your campaigns in Google Ads. And if you want the slides in PDF, just reach out as well, and I'll send you them through LinkedIn chat or through mail or whatever. We can figure something out. So, okay, that's it, guys. Thank you all very much for being here. It was very fast, but I tried to keep it short as possible, and I hope you learned something. Thank you.